It's a chilly start, frost out there for many, low cloud, mist and fog, and it's dry as well with this ridge of high pressure across the country. Isobars opened out, so light winds, and weather fronts staying well away for the time being. So for many of us, although it is a grey and misty start, it is also dry. A lot of low cloud has persisted through central and eastern areas, and further west, even though sunshine is in greater supply, there are also here some mist and fog patches. And where we do get some fog at this time of year, the sun being weak, some of it could last well into the afternoon, if not remain all day. Otherwise, where we do get some sunshine coming through, 11, 12 Celsius in the south, 6 to 9 Celsius further north, feeling pleasant enough with light winds. And for the vast majority, it does stay dry. Just 1 or 2 showers affecting parts of Kent, perhaps East Anglia as well, around coastal areas. The dry weather continues overnight. Again, we'll see a lot of low cloud through central and eastern areas, and where we don't see the low cloud, we'll see mist, fog and frost patches forming. So it'll be a chilly start again tomorrow morning. But having said that, it's going to be a bit milder in parts of Northern Ireland, because here we've got cloudier skies moving in, a bit more of a breeze coming through, and some spots of rain, not much really, affecting western and northern parts of Northern Ireland and then into the Western Isles. Elsewhere across the UK, after any early mist and fog lifts gradually, there will be some sunshine, particularly in the south and around western fringes away from Northern Ireland. Temperatures up to 9 to 10 Celsius in the south, 5 to 7 in the north. So feeling a little bit colder, and that cooling trend continues. But what we're also going to see later this week is higher pressure over Scandinavia, exerting its influence over the UK, leading to drier weather, just some few showers coming in from the east, but also colder conditions.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards in public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
A very good morning to you. You're watching The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, here on GB News. And today, we're exploring challenges for the Prime Minister once again. The Online Harms Bill, the Online Safety Bill as it was rebranded, has got legal but harmful stripped out. But many other anti-free speech clauses remain. And migration. Just what could be done to stop those coming from safe countries staying in the United Kingdom? That and the birth rate in the United Kingdom. Is childcare expense stopping female entrepreneurialism? All that to come after the headlines.
A very good morning. It's 9:32. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. A new section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means social media sites will no longer be required to remove material which is legal but considered to be harmful. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after repeatedly being delayed. The Culture Minister, Michelle Donnellan, told GB News the most important part of the bill is strengthening accountability and transparency. The Prime Minister says the UK's golden era of relations with China is over. In his first major foreign policy speech, Rishi Sunak vowed to evolve the UK's stance towards the country during the Lord Mayor's banquet speech in London last night. He added the UK now needed to replace wishful thinking with robust pragmatism towards competitors. Chinese authorities have clamped down on protests against strict COVID restrictions after unrest over the weekend. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in an attempt to deter further demonstrations. Protests have grown after a fire in a high-rise block in western China killed 10 people last week. The country said it will speed up its vaccination process for those aged 60 and over. The Queen Consort's hosting a major reception at Buckingham Palace to raise awareness of violence against women and girls. The event, being held as part of the United Nations 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, will also be attended by survivors, their families, as well as others. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. It's GB News. Now let's go back to the briefing with Tom.
Good morning, it's 9:34 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. And it's a busy week in Westminster. This morning, changes to the Online Harms Bill strip out controversial plans to rid the British internet of content that is legal but harmful. But other restrictive elements of the bill remain. Might libertarian rebels demand more concessions from the government? Well, if they do, it would only add to the woes of Rishi Sunak. Elsewhere, fully fledged rebellions are growing on the planning system, some to restrict house building, others to legalise onshore wind farms. And just yesterday, the Prime Minister faced a challenge on illegal migration. Why is Britain one of the few countries in Europe that accepts so many claimed refugees from countries that are widely considered to be safe? That's what David Davis and a group of Conservative MPs have asked the Home Secretary. Could criminal gangs be taking advantage of our modern slavery laws? A group of MPs have highlighted the different way in which Britain treats claimed refugees from Albania in particular, compared to other European countries. Here are the initial asylum application acceptance rates of Albanians across European countries for last year. The UK accepted 55.4% of those it processed, accepting hundreds more than any other European country. Indeed, no comparable European country other than the UK accepted 3 figures of Albanian refugee claims. The French had an acceptance rate of just 2.3%. For the Germans, it was 0%. In Greece, 0.6%. Italy had 19.9%, accounting for just 67 people due to a low number of claims. But Belgium had a 3.1 acceptance rate, and countries like Sweden and the Netherlands both had 0% acceptance rates. Something is clearly significantly different when it comes to the UK and how we handle these cases compared to other developed European countries. Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by Bob Seeley, who's supportive of David Davis's letter yesterday. And Bob, this seems to be like quite a reasonable ask of the government to explore why the United Kingdom is taking so many more people from what are generally considered to be safe countries.
Tom, I think you ask a very good question, and I think David's letter, as ever, David Davis speaks a great deal of sense. I think we've got to ask why we allow ourselves to take people claiming asylum when they're coming from safe countries. And if they are being trafficked illegally as victims of modern slavery, then returning those folks to their homes is actually a kind and generous act. So I am completely bemused, as I'm sure many of your listeners are, as to why somebody can come from a safe country, travel through potentially one, potentially half a dozen safe countries, and then claim asylum here. I'm also completely bamboozled, as I'm sure your viewers and listeners are as well, as to why then our system seems to accept that so many of these people are claiming asylum, despite coming from a safe country, travelling through safe countries, to come to us. And as you say yourself, there are some states that say if you've come from a safe country, through safe countries, you go back to that safe country. And I think this is frankly an idea that we need to be exploring, and I think we just need a reality check by looking at what other countries do and stop this sort of endless self-flagellation about sort of somehow taking in immigrants who are economic migrants is somehow makes us kind. I'm not sure that it does. I think it just makes us a little bit gullible, and we need to be protecting our borders better. And if we could return those folks, I think it's one way, as David says in his very sensible letter, of killing this terrible trade of trafficking humans and trafficking across the English Channel, which is very dangerous, as we know.
Do you think the government might be receptive to this letter, to this idea of sort of setting out the countries that are safe, that we will treat differently from those that might not be?
I think Suella is going to be a great Home Secretary, and I think Suella will be looking at this letter very carefully, and I hope very much when I see Suella, as I'm sure I will at some point this week, we'll be pressing our case with her and saying, look, let's look at these incredibly sensible measures, let's look at what other countries do, like Sweden, like Netherlands. They're not exactly bastions of authoritarianism, you know, and they take a much tougher line. Let's look at what the French do. They're accepting very low levels. So we have to ask ourselves the fundamental question, Tom. If you come from a safe country, if you go through a series of safe countries to come to the UK, why are you allowed to claim asylum, and why are so many of those asylum rates, why is the acceptance rate so high compared to so many other countries?
Well, Bob, thank you so much for talking us through those issues. It's really, really interesting, and no doubt one that we'll follow very, very closely over the coming days. But turning now to another challenge for the government, online safety legislation. This morning, the government declared the death of the peculiar legal but harmful farce, where things that are legal offline were to be removed from the internet if deemed harmful but legal by the government. Well, the removal of this clause is no doubt a win for free speech campaigners, but we mustn't let this news distract from the extra things in the online safety bill that are made illegal. For a start, content that causes serious distress is made illegal. Now, how does a government determine whether content may or may not cause serious distress? There are some people who are very easily distressed by the mildest of content. And secondly, there are vague, reasonable grounds to infer within the bill. Now, the reasonable grounds to infer content that may be illegal is the bar for assessing illegality. Well, that's a very different standard from the bar to assess illegality offline. After all, things are legal or people are innocent until proven guilty. Under the auspices of the online safety bill, content may well be illegal until proven legal. Well, let's discuss this further with Sam Armstrong. He's the Legislative Affairs Director at the Free Speech Union. And first of all, Sam, this must be a win for you, getting rid of this very controversial clause, legal but harmful.
Yeah, look, that is progress. There's no doubt that to an extent it's a step in the right direction. Now,
That said, there's a big caution note here. The government is still requiring tech firms to put standards such that normal people, that people who don't want to see extreme content online as they see it, don't have to see it. Now, we're slightly worried there that in the past, conservative news websites, for example, have been judged to be content that might offend people, and that the default settings on Facebook are that you might never, for example, see a clip from GBNews because a tech company in California has judged that GB News doesn't meet with their standards of what ordinary people might think is acceptable or not.
That is a very, very concerning thing that most people, I suppose, would be unaware with, because when it comes to all of these questions about protecting people and child safety and all the rest of it, it's very, very easy to agree in the abstract. But when we come down to who gets to define what is harmful, what should be removed, there we get into the weeds.
Yes, that's right. And look, I should say that there is nobody in the debate at a serious level that doesn't want action taken to protect children from some of the most harmful online content that is around. Everybody is supportive of that. Where this gets controversial is when it comes to adults, free choosing adults that can make decisions for themselves. Do they really need protecting from content? And one of the most concerning parts of this new revised version is there seems to be very little protection, additional protection for what other jurisdictions refer to as journalistic content or content of democratic importance, which I think most people would think, well, hang on, I get restricting content if it's just out there, it's egregious, it's just for the purpose of it. But when it's debates, when it's discussions of an essential nature, could a future Labour government, for example, and left-wing firms in California use it to curtail speech that many of your viewers think ought to be entirely free to make online?
There's something very concerning in the bill that hasn't got a lot of media coverage, and this is the whole distress-causing elements. Content that is likely to cause distress to an individual must be removed from the internet. That seems like an incredibly arbitrary standard, given the way that debate is so often conducted today. People can claim distress or psychological harm from the most mildest of words.
Yes, it's extraordinarily vague. And of course, the tech companies are on the hook if they get it wrong. So if they leave something up and said, we don't think this is likely to cause distress, somebody says, no, it did cause distress, and the tech companies get it wrong, well, the tech companies could be on the hook for fines from Ofcom or even legal action. So what we're worried, of course, is that they're going to gold plate those standards. They're going to go even further. They're going to say, well, if in doubt, keep it out. And that could have, I fear, a really, really chilling consequence for free speech. Now, of course, this bill's still got to go through the House of Lords. Members of the House of Commons could, as you say, continue to amend it to strengthen it yet further, strengthen free speech provisions yet further. I hope they do so, because at the moment, I think there's a lot of people that are still remaining very nervous about this very big, very consequential piece of legislation.
Yes, it's hard to overemphasise how unwielding it is. It's a vast piece of legislation that's been worked on for, I think, 4 years now. Really quite significant stuff. We'll keep a very close eye on it. But for now, Sam Armstrong, Director of Legislative Affairs Director of the Free Speech Union, thanks for joining us this morning. Well, it's not just parliamentary antics that we're talking about today, because it all comes down to the wire this evening as England take on Wales for the first time ever at a World Cup. Yes, England simply need to avoid defeat in their final group game to qualify for the next round, but Wales must secure a 4-goal margin over their domestic rivals and rely on Iran and the USA drawing. Well, let's explore a little bit of the football antics with Paul Hawkins from Doha, who is here to tell us about how the atmosphere is building, and live from the Kirby estate in south-east London, who are certainly behind the Three Lions, we've got our London reporter Alice Porter. So, Paul, first of all, from Doha, what's the mood on the ground?
Yeah, morning, Tom. The mood on the ground here, very expectant if you're an England fan. Some Wales fans also feeling, well, there's two real mindsets for Welsh fans. They're either saying, look, it's a long shot, we get through to the last round, it's great to be at our first World Cup since 1958, or they're saying, hang on, lads, we can do this. Yes, we're the underdogs against England, but we can win this game. And indeed, Rob Page, the Welsh manager, in his press conference yesterday, kind of playing some psychology, trying to take some of the pressure off the Welsh. They have to do a lot to qualify for the last 16, but he was trying to take some of the pressure off, saying, look, this game against England is beatable, but really we have nothing left to prove. That said, it would be really disappointing for Wales fans to go out with a whimper, given their performance in the last game and in the first half of the first game that they played against the USA. So look, lots for the Welsh to do. England as well, looking to bounce back from that appalling performance against the USA in the previous game. So both teams have a lot to prove, and of course it is a British derby, which is why these England and Welsh fans are well up for it.
Yeah, it's really important. We need a win. 100% we need a win. And unfortunately we've got to do you over. But yeah, the start is a bit disheartening. But it is what it is.
I don't think so, no. I think there'll be a bit of squad rotation and there'll be a big performance to silence the critics of Gareth Southgate, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, but how much are you looking forward to it? Because even if there was nothing riding on it, it'd still be a big game anyway.
Oh, massive game, massive game. Yeah. Like, when are we going to see this again? It's been 64 years for us. And to play England in the World Cup, a home nation, is a big thing anyway. Yeah. So I think we just enjoy the moment anyway.
How long have you guys been friends?
Well, we worked together. We've been friends for quite a bit.
Yeah. Before the draw was made, were you working together? So instantly you said, right, okay. Are you still going to be able to work together after this?
It depends on the result.
See,
you're bragging right.
I know. There's sourness on that side. No matter what happens, 100%. No animosity. Good game, hopefully. And may the underdogs win, really.
So Wales have to beat England by a big score. Hope there's a draw in the USA-Iran game. England simply need a point to qualify for the next round. So potentially both could go through. And before that, at 3 o'clock UK time, we've got the other group games. The Netherlands take on Qatar, Senegal play Ecuador, and that is the group that matches up with England's group for the next phase, if you see what I mean. So basically England, should they qualify, and Wales, should they qualify, will play either Senegal, the Netherlands or Ecuador. But by the time we kick off in the England and Wales game, we'll know which two of those three they'll face in the next round. And some breaking news to bring you, Tom, from here in Qatar. It has just clouded over. There is a cloud in the sky and it's only 29 degrees. Probably very different, I imagine, from where Alice is right now, especially given you can have a beer in the UK, even if it is, 11 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning now.
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but a solitary cloud in the sky. Perhaps that'll chivvy on the England team because it'll look more like home. Paul, thank you for that live in Doha. Let's go to Alice Porter now in London. Alice, what's the mood there? Are people already revving up for this evening?
They are indeed. I'm on the Kirby estate, which for those of you who don't know is in South London, and it's become quite iconic over the years for its wonderful display of flags whenever England play. This began about 10 years ago with a couple of flags, and it's just started to grow from there. For those of you who are watching can see, we've got around 400 flags on the estate that have all been put up in the sky all across in front of people's balconies, and this is organised by many of the people who live on the estate, and it's a great way for so many people to feel involved and to have that community spirit. One of the things I love about it is there are also opportunities for people to put their flags up from other countries, as long as they are competing. That is the only rule that I understand. You can't put up any flag willy-nilly. It has to be that you are competing in the World Cup. So it's an exciting time for people on the estate, and it's a wonderful opportunity for people to come together. And it was in the summer when the Lionesses were playing, there was a wonderful screen up with lots of people watching it. It's going to be a little bit chillier today, so unfortunately there's going to be fewer people out and about watching it, but I think perhaps there might be a few windows open, and so if there's any goals, fingers crossed, from England, I think that's what people on the estate will be supporting. They'll be very much cheering away, and hopefully everyone on the estate will be hearing it. There is, I don't think there's going to be many pints at this point in the morning, but I have been given a Kirby Estate mug with my tea this morning. So not yet a pint, although I'm pretty sure there'll be a few people having some pints later today.
I might have to join them, but my gosh, I would hate to be a Wales supporter surrounded by that scale of England flags there. Well, it will be a fascinating thing to watch, and good to see people coming together despite the cold and chilly weather. But Alice there from South London, thank you very much for bringing us that. Back now to more domestic affairs, and finally this morning, is the excessive cost of childcare lowering the UK birth rate and indeed preventing innovation? Well, a new report by the Female Founders Forum, a project co-created by the Entrepreneurs Network and the bank Barclays, has found that high-profile women in business say the cost of childcare is too high and limits the creativity of many women across the industry. Are we depressing our productive potential as a country? Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Arya Babu from the Entrepreneurs Network. Welcome to the programme. And first of all, what does this report say?
Well, it highlights that the UK has an unusually low number of female founders when compared to other nations that are similar to us, like the US, Canada, the Netherlands. You have much more like 50-50 ratios, whereas the UK, it's only about 1 in 3 entrepreneurs are women. And then we're exploring, why is this the case? Are UK people in business disproportionately sexist, or is it more fundamental factors, which I think it is, like the high cost of childcare, like STEM drop-off rates and other such factors?
It's interesting because so often when we have these discussions, people do lurch for the sexism button, thinking that everything must be about discrimination rather than looking for those other factors. But you're saying that there's some evidence here to suggest that it might not be that people are inherently nasty or wrong or prejudiced. There's something to do with how we structure childcare.
Yeah, so I don't want to completely dismiss the discrimination angle out of hand. Like, definitely female founders have talked to me about stories they have about how investors especially have acted sexistly, but this doesn't seem to be that different from other countries. What is really different is that we have the most expensive childcare in the UK.
Why is childcare so expensive?
There are a number of factors. A lot of them are regulatory, so we have very, very strict curricula that everyone who wants to work in childcare faces. We've got quite strict ratios, so each person who works in childcare can take care of fewer children. And like many things in this country, it comes down to planning. It's quite difficult to get planning permission to be a childminder or to run a nursery.
So looking at each of those sort of, I suppose, supply-side problems in turn, the previous government under Liz Truss was planning to bring about some childcare reform, relaxing ratios. What do we know about what this government is doing in terms of whether or not it will take on that big sort of bold supply-side reform agenda?
Unfortunately, I don't think this government is going to be as bold as the last one. I think there were lots of mistakes that I'm sure the Truss government was going to make, but it seemed like they were willing to be quite creative and quite bullish. And more of the same clearly is not going to make things better. Childcare is rising much faster than the cost of inflation. This is one of the first times we've seen the number of women in work decrease. And I don't feel like they're willing to do something out of the range of normal to fix those problems.
And so when we're looking at what really could be done, because clearly there is an issue here if the UK is out of kilter with so many other comparable countries, particularly through these costs. Within the realm of political possibility, what are some immediate steps that could be taken?
So I think we could just give people some clarity about where you're allowed to run childminding businesses. So one very simple thing is Ofsted and the planning system don't line up. I think we should leave whether or not a location is OK to be a childcaring facility or a nursery in the hands of Ofsted instead of the planning system. That way you remove one veto point. I think another easy win would be to extend the babysitters allowance. You don't have to be early years curriculum qualified if you're taking care of a child in their own home outside of working hours, which to me feels like it was perfectly created to stop people from working. But you can extend the babysitter's allowance to say, well, you can babysit any child in their own home, provided you're known to the family. There are all kinds of easy wins that you can do that I think people intuitively think are OK, but have been sort of regulated out of existence by accident.
So interesting how so much cost in this country comes from just this huge array of different rules that sort of don't seem that well thought through and haven't had this big sort of, I suppose, audit as perhaps they should have done. Really interesting stuff. Well, Arya Babu, thank you very much for talking us through that from the Entrepreneurs Network, because we do need a lot more entrepreneurs in this country, particularly with the dire growth rates we're seeing over the coming years. But that's it for me today. Coming up, it's Bev Turner Today, who'll be exploring many, many more issues facing this country. But first, here's the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. We've not had many mornings like this morning so far in the autumn. It's a chilly start, frost out there for many, low cloud, mist and fog,
And it's dry as well, with this ridge of high pressure across the country. Isobars opened out, so light winds, and weather fronts staying well away for the time being. So for many of us, although it is a grey and misty start, it is also dry. A lot of low cloud has persisted through central and eastern areas. And further west, even though sunshine is in greater supply, there are also here some mist and fog patches. And where we do get some fog at this time of year, the sun being weak, some of it could last well into the afternoon, if not remain all day. Otherwise, where we do get some sunshine coming through, 11, 12 Celsius in the south, 6 to 9 Celsius further north, feeling pleasant enough with light winds. And for the vast majority, it does stay dry. Just 1 or 2 showers affecting parts of Kent, perhaps East Anglia as well, around coastal areas. The dry weather continues overnight. Again, we'll see a lot of low cloud through central and eastern areas. And where we don't see the low cloud, we'll see mist, fog and frost patches forming. So it'll be a chilly start again tomorrow morning. But having said that, it's going to be a bit milder in parts of Northern Ireland, because here we've got cloudier skies moving in, a bit more of a breeze coming through and some spots of rain